you would think you would hear, oh, we finally caught this one, hitman. He's been operating here for years. We finally got, never, because it just doesn't exist.
Something that seems constant in your films is the non-conformity of the characters and the conflict they have when faced with the possibility of this idea of leaving the place in which they find themselves and remaining faithful to their own convictions. And I think that happens with Gary in this movie, a guy with an ordinary life who suddenly ends up involved in this whole thing of being someone else that takes him out of this routine and everything he had experienced until now. But what do you think about this conformism that Gary breaks by working with the police? What do you think he represents in this whole story?
He's kind of a contradictory character, isn't he? He lives that contradiction. Here he is on one hand teaching, encouraging young people, his students, to be themselves and to kind of be whoever they want to be in this kind of nonconformist thing. And yet he's moonlighting, he's working for about as conformist as you can get, law enforcement, underground, sting operations. So he himself is a contradiction. And I think the movie has contradictions flying all over it. To me, it's a collision of contradiction. It's an introvert who becomes an extrovert. It's conformity, non-conformity, it's all that. It's passion and dispassion. He starts off kind of with no passion. He finds that kind of very adult sexual, passion, and that takes him in a whole nother realm. It's a dangerous area, it can get you in trouble, which it does. So, it's fun to see those opposites kind of colliding in one person on their journey,
Glenn, and it seems to me that Gary represents in some way a symbol of liberation for those who want to hire him, and he himself feels that freedom when leaving his comfort zone and his routine life. Entering this fantasy of the characters, he disguises himself as until gets too involved in this work, And I know that you also had a lot of creative freedom in developing this character, and you even got very involved in the costumes and so on. But what do you think about it? What do you think was the biggest challenge you faced in Hitman in bringing Gary to life? I say this because I think you did a great job.
Oh, thank you. I think the biggest challenge when bringing Gary to life is that, I would say that the other, film comps that we're talking about are much more linear. This is a movie that really exists on a lot of different character levels and tonal levels and genres. So what you're really trying to do is make all those things feel cohesive. And I think it takes a filmmaker like Richard Linklater to kind of bring all these things together. But the magic of that, when you're bringing, genres and subverting tropes and you have all these different characters and identities, is that the audience is never ahead of the movie. The audience is constantly on edge and constantly discovering the movie because they've never seen anything like it. So I'm really proud of that part, that we have a movie that I think is truly original, and I think that only happens because you can have a director, a filmmaker, guiding the ship like Richard Linklater.
Standing ovation.
Okay, Daniel Day.
One of the things that I like most about this film is that in its own way, I think it rethinks the myth and the concept that we all have about a hitman, that we have seen so many times in the movies or on television, but that always it is approached from a colder or psychological side, And on this occasion, through Gary, I feel that we see a more intimate, fun, and interesting perspective of this type of characters that seems very valuable to me within the film. But what do you think was the challenge when it came to approaching the main role of the film in this way, having all that cultural background that we have had for generations about a hitman?
Yeah, I think the movie Hitman, we're really kind of deconstructing just the notion of a hitman movie. It's these tropes. I really do think the notion of these retail hitmen, that there's these guys out there, lone wolves, you can hire to eliminate people. It's so pervasive. Everyone believes it. It's just not true. I mean, there's gang-related things. There's drug cartel. Obviously, there's violence and territorial disputes and wars and underground economy. But the idea that there's this lone wolf, unaffiliated killers out there, it's just, there's never been a case that you've never heard of one arrested. You would think you would hear, oh, we finally caught this one, hitman. He's been operating here for years. We finally got, never, because it just doesn't exist. So, we're dealing in a realm of myth to begin with. That was a fun thing to explore. And how pop culture influences the real world to such a degree. People are mystified when they find out it doesn't exist, but it sure exists in movies. Like I said, movies invented hitmen. They're great characters. It's very cinematic.
You have worked on several films that combine action and comedy. However, on this occasion, it seems to me that Matt is very important to the plot of Hitman, since it is from her that the story advances to a point that I personally never saw coming, and I understand that Richard made you part of the creative process, creating a journey and an identity for your character. But what do you think about it? What do you think what makes Maddie different or special from other characters you play in this kind of projects?
Well, I think you said it. I think she's important to the plot. I mean, every character is sort of that I've played is sort of different, and I think that's for my own sort of creation or boredom. I feel like if I play the same character, I'll probably get bored. But I think Madison is the most out there character. She transforms so much throughout the movie. You see her start out in this sort of coming from like this place of trauma, and she's unsure of what to do, that she's so desperate that she's about to kill her husband to have a taste of freedom, until she meets, Ron, and he gives her a different perspective and lets her know that there's another path to freedom. And I think she's really grateful for that. But that's where sort of her reinvention happens. And that was a place where I was able to have a lot of fun. And like you said, Rick made me a part of the creative process. I've never had that before either. So I think there's a lot of elements of myself, and sort of even the way that I speak is very similar to Madison, just because I was able to put things into my own wording. So that was really, really fun and sort of liberating. I'm either doing an accent or very strict in an American accent, or I'm trying to be really well understood, or I'm playing a little bit more of a tough character. So I think there's a side of Madison that feels a little bit more free, and I had a lot of fun.
Who is your hitman?